While Frank was thinking all this, he suddenly heard his name being called out. It was his turn to recite the rules of participle. Frank thought for a moment that if something would happen so that he could recite the entire rules without making a mistake, but as he had not prepared. So he faltered, and then he stood there embarrassed, feeling that he would be scolded. But M. Hamel said in his kind, serious voice, "I'm not going to scold you, little Frank. You must be already feeling very bad. See how it is. We all say to ourselves that, bah, we have plenty of time, we will do it tomorrow." Now this is what is the attitude of procrastination. We all say to ourselves that we have enough time. He goes on to say that Elsie had the same attitude. It postponed on tomorrow. Then he said that it is when those people would come and they will say that you don't know even to read or write in French, so what difference it will make if you are being taught German? How can you call yourself Frenchman? But then he further said that you are not the only to be blamed. The parents are also to be blamed because they were not so anxious of sending their children to school. Rather, they wanted them to work on mills and on the fields so that they could be extra earning. And Hamel does not spare himself. He says that he also had the same attitude because whenever they should have been in the class, he sent them out to water his flowers. And whenever he wanted to go for fishing, he called the school off. And then from one thing to another, he came on to the French language. He said that it is the world's most beautiful, most logical and clearest of all the languages. Here we see that little bit of chauvinistic attitude of M. Hamel towards his own language. But then he advised the people who were sitting over there to protect and preserve their language, because he says that if the people are enslaved and they hold on to their language, the language proves to be the key to the freedom. Now here language has not been taken only as the means of communication. Here language has been taken as the identity of a community, the culture of a community, and the tradition of a community. And so by preserving language, all these things are to be preserved. Then from there, he started with the lesson of his grammar. Franz says he understood everything that day. Now what was the reason behind it? The reason behind it is he was more concentrated that day on the things which were being done in the classroom. The same thing happens. For example, same subject, same teacher, same length of class. But sometimes that class seems to be very short and sometimes that class seems to be very long. Reason? One day you are involved and you don't know the time passing. Another day you are not into the lesson and you feel every second to be longer. And that was the reason. He furthermore says that maybe the teacher was also teaching the things very patiently, as if he wanted to drive everything with one stroke. From grammar, it came to the other lessons, and Hamel had brought copies for everyone. And these copies were hanging on the rod in front of on the desk, and on every copy he had written in a very beautiful round handwriting, France, Elsie, France, Elsie. And he says that it seemed as if this was small flags floating all around in the classroom. During the writing lesson, everyone was involved. There was hardly any sound except for the scribbling of pen on the paper. Even the littlest one, who were tracing the fish hooks, they were also doing it so meticulously as if it was French. A beetle flew in the class, but no one paid any attention. While Franz was writing, he heard the sound of the pigeons who had made nest in one corner of the room. And when he heard them, a thought came in his mind that they have forced German on us. Will they make these birds and animals also sing and speak in German? Now what does this signify? This signifies the pain of being deprived of using one's own language. That pain of losing that freedom. Now, While Franz was writing, he occasionally raised his head to look at M. Hamel, the master. M. Hamel was sitting motionless on his chair. Only his eyes were moving around as if he wanted to capture the entire picture. Now this seemed very strange to Franz because the master was working there for almost 40 years and hardly anything had changed. The desk and the bench had just worn out smooth because of use. The walnut trees that he had planted had grown taller. The grapevine, the wine, the hope wine which he had planted, it has gone up to the roof. Hardly anything had changed. Now while he was thinking about all this, he heard the sound from upstairs. And Hammel's sister was packing because they had to leave the next day. And Franz thought how much painful it would be for the master. Now here we see Franz empathizing with his master. Now there is a difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is to feel sorry for someone. Empathy is to feel the pain of someone. So here actually Franz is empathizing with his master. But the master did not let his emotions overshadow him. He controlled his emotions. He was brave till the last. He had the history lesson, then he had the alphabets with the little kids, ba, be, bi, bi, boo. And that time, the old Hauser, he was also reciting the alphabets with the little kids. And he was shivering and crying, and the tears were rolling all around. Franz says, we wanted to laugh and cry. It was a mixed feeling. Laugh because it seemed very funny to see an old man crying, but at the same time, everyone could feel the seriousness, the sadness which was prevalent in that classroom. And then, the church clock struck 12. It was noon. And then, the trumpets of the Prussian soldiers returning from the drill. M. Hamel stood. He was very pale, as if the entire color has been taken away from his face, bloodless. Franz says that, I had never seen my master being so tall. Now there could be two reasons. First reason, Franz was for the very first time so much attentive. Now he was observing the things very minutely. And secondly, standing tall also means to be proud of. And M. Hamel, standing tall, was trying as if to say that even if he has been deprived of teaching his own language, he was still proud of his language, he was still proud of his country. And then he started addressing his class. He said, I. And he could not speak any further, as if something choked him. The man who had been so brave in completing all the lesson in that last lesson with that feeling at the back of his mind that this was his last lesson and from next day onwards he will be not doing this, could not control himself. His emotions overpowered him and that choked him. And when he saw that he could not say anything, he picked up a piece of chalk and with all his might and as large as he could write, he wrote it on the blackboard. Vive la France. Long live France. And he had not even that much of courage left to look at his class for the last time. Without looking at them, he made a gesture with his hand and said, the class is over, you may go. And here we come to the end of the chapter.